Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 26, 2023 Planning Board meeting. Town of Victor, I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God. I'd just like to make the usual announcements. The emergency exits are to your left and right outside of this room. Restrooms are out of the back door and to the left. Please be sure to sign in at the attendance sheet in the back if you haven't already, whether or not you're presenting or approaching the board. There are business cards back there also with contact information for the planning department. Also on the back table is a copy of resolutions, draft or otherwise, that are going to be read this evening and acted on. Please turn off your cell phones, silence them. It happened last meeting that you had a few interruptions, and it's not polite to those who are trying to discuss or even hear what's going on in the board. And please take all conversations out into the hallway and close the doors behind you if you must do that during the meeting. We have a couple of meeting minutes to approve. Joe Limbeck is not attending this meeting, but so for the August 22nd, everyone here was at that board meeting. Does anybody have any comments or corrections for Lisa?
No.
Nope. Okay, and as far as the September 12th meeting minutes, everyone was here. Any comments for Lisa on that meeting
No
minutes?
comment.
Nope. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion for approval of both meeting minutes.
I'll move.
Ernie moves. Got seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Carried 4-0. Correspondence received regarding Collier Park. Chad Flansburgh is on the record as having submitted some correspondence. Board committee dates, town board. Seeing no one from the board here. Kim?
So your next meeting is going to be Wednesday, October 11th, starting with a discussion item for the Eastview Mall Mixed-Use Overlay District. The town board's looking at amending that mixed-use overlay to include the BJ's parcel and height requirement. So you'll be seeing that. They'll be referring that at their next meeting to you guys. And actually, that's the only thing on the agenda unless there's any carryovers from tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Kim. So this evening, we have 3 items on the agenda. The first 2, there are open, actually all 3 of them are open public hearings. So with the first one is the Driscoll site plan, 1420 Strong Road, owner Nathan Driscoll. The applicant's requesting approval to create a single-family residence on Lot 1 of the O'Neill subdivision, and we've seen some of these before. So is someone here for that application?
Good evening, Board. My name is Mike Green, Greenland Surveying. We prepared the site plan for Nathan. And we did get comments from Labella that we are just about done addressing, I hope. A couple of them were just some Scribner's errors from that one invert was mislabeled. That's point number 2. Number 3, it's understood they may need a permit. Number 4, we've revised the grading so that we won't disturb the utility pole. Stabilization will take the appropriate steps for any stabilization, which brings us back to the first bullet point was the septic rate, which is the bugaboo on it. So what we did is we went back out there today. We did a perk test at 30 inches deep, and it did stabilize at 5 minutes. I haven't had a chance actually to talk to the engineer in person yet. I left a message earlier, but it was getting kind of late. So we're hoping that we can get final approval tonight with the blessing of the revised septic system design from the engineer.
So essentially, single-family residence application with no special setbacks or
No,
other?
we're asking for no variances,
Variances.
no relief from any of the set forth requirements. Site distance is good. It's going to be a beautiful, beautiful home sitting up there when he's done building it. I have the owner Nate and his builder are here tonight
Evening.
as well.
Okay, great.
So if the board has any questions, I think I can answer them, or else they can.
Okay, it is public hearing, so we'll give them the opportunity. First, I'd like to see with Wes, comments, he started to address them.
Sure. Yeah. Labella's letter dated September 22nd. The first comment that we had was regarding the septic perk rate. And the test notes that we have from 2020 indicate that the minimum, or the amount of time it took for the water to drop was 1 minute. And that's a little bit too fast for the design and construction standards, although New York State allows for that type of, that perk rate at that speed. You know, we didn't feel comfortable with allowing or permitting this particular perk test, which it sounds like is why you went out and have done another one. We're okay with that. It sounds reasonable. I guess what we would like to do is probably schedule a time to have someone witness.
If you'd like, I got a 5-minute video.
Well, I can talk about that. Yeah, maybe that could be submitted. I could talk with our,
Yeah, whatever you guys like to.
Our
If you'd like to
field-
meet back out there, we can run
field
again. I
person.
left the hole in place.
Yeah.
And we do another hole as well, so.
Yeah.
I know I can get 2 5-minute holes out there if that's.
yeah, that would be helpful. So, you know, the design and construction standards does allow for a waiver for the planning board to waive the 5 minute. I think the minimum it suggests is 5 minutes. And we're okay with maybe 3 or 4 minutes, but I think 1 minute is probably a little bit too fast.
Yeah, I think we hit that just at the right time. I was there personally for both
Yep.
perk tests, and, you know, it was only at 24 inches and it had been dry, so they did run really quick.
Yeah.
But, you know, the fines are a little bit deeper down. It's definitely a slower rate as you get deeper in.
Yeah. So I don't think it's.
But I would hesitate going much deeper, because then the soil changes to almost a really good sand.
Yeah.
Without the loam mixed in, so,
Yeah, I noticed that.
yeah.
So Wes, what would be the treatment required if it just couldn't percolate it, 5 minutes or even 3, say?
Well, I suppose there could be some sort of alternative system designed.
Yeah, there's 2 options. One, we could, import a leach bed that would be mounted up, and then the lines could sit in that, but, we're hoping to prove that the soil that's there would be sufficient, especially a little bit deeper.
Is there other soil on site? You said deeper, it's
It
sand.
could-
and
The
it
deeper
would
you
run too
go,
fast.
so there's a layer of topsoil, then there's about 2.5 feet of a loamy, silty sand that is, yeah, and it perked a little bit better up top, but as you get down, it slows. So, we could do a deep trench design if that was something that they would sign off on, or I believe the board can waive that based on their things, and just say that, you understand the conditions that are there and you feel comfortable with the design going forward.
I guess
as
I'd
is.
need a good reason to waive it, or at least understand why you could just drop that requirement if a 1 minute or 2 minute perk is.
I think what they're worried about, this is my stand would be, let's say that really good sand did come all the way to the surface, and you installed the system, and now that water's just running down. Now, these lots are not on public water,
Right.
they are on
As
well water.
wells.
I believe that's the driving thing, but I'm comfortable with if we keep the system up in the first 2.5 foot of soil and let it perk down through the next 1.5 foot under that.
Because you have
You know.
2 tests in a large leach field.
Yep.
And you don't know what's happening at all the way around.
No, but, yeah, and we did slide down into the lower section right next to where we were before. So, we could prove that we have 5-minute perks at that depth, and if they'd like to witness them, that's fine,
Yeah. All right, well, let's see how the discussion goes too. Anything else, Wes, comment-wise, or?
I guess just to add a little bit more, just for the public's benefit, right? These lots are relatively large lots. They're out in the country. the neighbors are, I can't remember what the size of the lots are in this
Like
area.
8 acres, and then
8
there's a
acres.
10 acre, and yeah, they're big.
Yeah.
Well, distance to wells could be a key for that.
Yep, yep, and they're well over 100 feet, I believe, from the.
I think we
from the
designed it at
proposed well.
200 feet
Yep.
away from where the leach lines are.
There's plenty of distance there, and we just want to be sure that there's enough interaction between the effluent from the septic and the soils that are there, rather than just,
Sure, just running away. That's the whole point of a leach field.
right, so.
And how about the neighbor's well to the north?
There's no house to the north for quite a ways. Across
Okay.
the street is the old, was it snowmobile sales or something like that? Yeah, that's the closest.
All right, so someone, if
And
they,
I'm assuming that next lot, if it does become a lot, it's gonna have at least, what, another 100 foot of green space or conservation easement, so, you know, where the septic system's going, you know, the next well's gonna be hundreds of feet away.
was that lot part of this subdivision? The one to the north?
The lot to the north of the yellow highlighted one, no, I don't believe that's part of the O'Neill.
So someone could come back and say subdivide that lot and have multiple houses. I don't know how big it is, but,
Yeah, so they would need to adhere to any separation requirements
Right.
once they came in.
but this would, honestly, this would impact that ability, the proximity of this leach field to that lot, correct?
I can't, Scott Harder might be able to, I'm going to put him on the spot. Maybe that's not a good idea.
Well, the lot, Suzie, if you could bring up
Separation
the
distance for.
site plan
from
again.
leach fields to property lines?
I believe it's a 10-foot
It's in
minimum.
the design manual, I think it's 10 feet.
Well, I'm just saying, if they want to put a well in,
They would have to.
they would
keep
have
it
to keep the well quite a
at least
distance
100 feet, but
away.
like I say, that, the way the town is laying things out with the green space zones, I can't imagine that they would be able to develop very close to that property line, but I guess it's something to
Yeah,
think
so
about.
see where the leach field is on this. I don't know how close that is to the lot line itself, but, and it looks like it's within feet, honestly, that leach field. So you'd have to have a well probably 200 feet away, or the house between.
Does the town have any plan on running water out there anytime soon?
Nope.
So right now, we have 12 foot of expansion area and about another 12 foot from the expansion area to the property line. So we're about 24 to 25 feet right now, the closest point.
I guess my point is, the other site, we had 150 feet between wells up on Taylor Road, and between the wells and the nearest leach field. And this one, if it's only 100 feet from a well, and it's leaching quick, or it's not leaching, it's draining quickly, it doesn't perk,
Well,
slowly.
like I say, we know that the top layer perked at 2, but down here it's perking
Yeah.
at 5.
Mhm.
So the water has to go down, it can't go up.
Yeah, just down towards the well is my problem.
Right, but it
Yeah,
can't, it's got to go through like 3 feet of soil before it gets to the,
Okay. I
So
guess-
otherwise, you know, I think Labella, we're fine with the site plan in general. We just want to resolve the perk test.
Okay,
That's all.
all right.
Do I understand it correctly
sorry.
that you did the test at 30 inches?
Yes.
6 inches deeper than 24?
Yep.
And you got a slower rate
by
at
4 minutes.
By 4 minutes. So that's kind of a partial deep trench system if you,
It could be, or you could just install it in the upper stuff based on the 5-minute perk rate, and it's got to go down, it's not going to go up. The basal area is just the same area, and it still has the same soils underneath it. But it has to perk through before it gets to anything different.
So it sounds like if you did it in the upper layer, it would go quickly to the lower layer, and then it would be slower going through it below that.
Correct.
yeah, that doesn't really comply with any
No.
design standard that I've ever heard, that's all. I would agree from a common sense standpoint, that would seem to be correct, but in terms of the,
I mean, we can just do a deep trench, we can add a little extra stone and go down 30 inches instead of 24.
I think a deep trench system meets the state specs, which wouldn't be difficult to do.
Not a, that's going to look better than importing 4 foot of material and
Absolutely, yeah.
having some kind of mound sitting out in front of the yard.
Well, they could access that slower perking soil that way, and I
Okay.
think that's in conformance with the 75A regs, and you're on your way. But you need somebody to witness that 5-minute perk then, do you?
That would be ideal,
Yep.
yeah.
Especially if it's close, from that perspective. Any other questions, Scott?
I would just maybe suggest that we consider that as a condition for approval.
One of the conditions already in there to address Labella's comments. That's one of them.
That's true.
Yeah. Any other questions, Scott?
I don't have any other questions. I think
Ernie?
it looks good.
You all set?
All
Ernie?
set.
Okay, Al?
I'm all set.
Okay, it is public hearing. Open the floor up to anyone who is
Thanks, Board.
interested in questioning the board or the applicant. Going once. Seeing none. Anything from online, I assume, not Sue? So with that, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll move.
Al moves.
Second.
Ernie seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing's closed. And unless there's any other comments from the board, we do have a draft resolution. And the question, or the letter from Labella is in here with comments regarding review of the leach field. So with that, and a pair of glasses. Driscoll Site Plan, application 34 SB 2023, whereas the planning board made the following findings of fact, and there are 9 of them, including Labella's September 22nd, 2023 letter. Whereas the planning board waived section 2793 of the town's design and construction standards to allow roof drainage to be discharged onto splash blocks and conveyed to the drainage swales where abutting or downstream properties will not be adversely affected. And such disconnection would promote opportunity for roof drainage to be infiltrated into soils. And I'm presuming, Wes, that's because the soil is so permeable that this shouldn't be an issue?
Yeah.
Okay. Now therefore be resolved that the application of Nathan and K. Driscoll, site plan entitled Driscoll Site Plan, drawn by Green Land Surveying, dated August 17th, 2023, received by the Planning Board August 28th, 2023, Planning Board Application 34 SP 2023 be approved with the following conditions. Conditions to be addressed prior to the chairman's signature on the site plan. Number 1 is standard. Number 2, comments on a letter dated September 22nd, 2023 from LaBelle Associates be addressed. That includes the comments regarding the leach field. Number 3, that all conservation easement markers be shown on the final site plan. Ongoing conditions, number 1, site plan comply with Town of Victor design and construction standards for land development, including section 4. Number 2, that a Town of Victor highway work permit be obtained prior to construction of curb cut on Strong Road. Number 3, that a building permit be obtained prior to the start of construction of the house and future storage building. Okay, that's indicated on the drawing. And be it further resolved that the planning board secretary distribute the planning board's approval letter. So on that resolution, do I hear a motion for approval?
Move.
Ernie moves.
I'll second.
Seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, carried 4-0.
Yeah.
You're welcome. So, item number 2, we've seen this one before, the Collier Park. This is still an open public hearing. 606 County Route 9, zoned residential 2B, application 1 PS 2023. Applicant is requesting approval to subdivide a 12.925 acre parcel into 6 individual lots with an existing house located at Lot 1. A new pole barn is proposed for Lot 1 and Lot 2. This will be the second step in a 3-step process for a major subdivision. The sketch plan was approved on July 11th, 2023, and I believe we're waiting for some information from involved agency. Oh, that's passed. So we are looking to move forward with lead agency status this evening and review some changes from the applicant. So with that,
Good evening. My name is Brian Marks with Marks Engineering. I'm here with David Coquit, Comark Holdings. Thank you for your summary there. Just to add to it a little bit, we have received comments from Labella regarding this on September 5th. We responded to those comments on September 14th. We have reviewed this with Ontario County DPW for the highway entrance, driveway entrances, and we've received a letter or an email from them stating that they're okay with the new entrances the new entrance proposed on County Road 9, and it meets everything as far as their standards. We've submitted application to Monroe County Water Authority for the new services. We've reviewed this application with the town fire chief, town highway superintendent, town code enforcement officer, and we've received positive feedback from all of those agencies. So we did receive a public comment email with a few items that needed to be addressed, I think, to this board. One of the items is the house setback. The proposed houses are set back over 40 feet from the public right of way. That is the town zoning code. We did measure a couple of the setbacks in the neighborhood, including some of the houses to the north. They're 34.5, which is directly across from Lot 6, which would be this house here, 34.5. This house here is 37 feet, and then they do eventually comply to over 40 feet from the public right of way as you move east on the Collier Crossing. So we are set back further from the existing houses on Collier Crossing, and we meet the zoning code. Second thing was discussed was the water pressures on Collier Crossing. We did end up calculating the static pressure for the very last lot at the top of the hill for the house at the very last lot beyond the right-of-way line. The static pressure is 44 PSI. Under peak demand with these 4 houses on the 8-inch main, which runs Collier Crossing, it drops to 42 PSI at the very top of the hill. So we're still within the town standard, which the town standard is a minimum of 35 PSI at each house within the community. So we did provide those calculations, and they are also with Monroe County Water Authority being reviewed. As far as traffic goes, peak hour traffic, which is your 8 to 9 or your 7:30 to 8:30 and your 4:30 to 5:30 range of those peak hours. A single-family residence will generate 1.5 cars per house, so we're talking adding 6 cars to Collier Crossing for the peak hour traffic. We do not feel that that is a very big impact for the traffic in this area. We have proven and we meet the safe stopping distance requirements for AASHTO, which is followed by the town, which is followed by the county, which is a standard across the state. We do meet that for the speed posted on the road, and we have proven that to the town engineer. We again talked about the county traffic on County Road 9. We do have a positive email from the traffic engineer for the county DPW stating that he's in agreement with our design. This application does not propose any new public infrastructure. This is an infill project that benefits the town in several different ways. They don't have to pay for maintenance on any new roads. They can utilize the infrastructure that's in place, that's designed, that meets, that can handle this kind of development. So that's a benefit to the community. And I think the town should be looking for more of those infill projects as the housing demands grow. Collier Road, it has started to sprawl and is starting to crack. I did talk with Mark Years about this. They do plan to pave the road in 2027. So they are working on their plans to repave that road. I'll turn it over to Dave. I'm sure he has a few things he would like to say about the deed restrictions, and let him answer those.
David Cook with Comark Holdings, owner of the property. One of the things that I have said to this board and to all the people that I've talked to from the neighborhood with this project is it is an infill project within the neighborhood of Collier's Crossing. While not really governed by this board, the deed restrictions and proposed document that was shared with me after the last meeting by Brian Ray, I did review that. It did not really put us in a position where we would control how this project would be developed. However, I did offer in order to keep the character of this neighborhood, we did offer a deed restriction that matched much of the language that was in that document that originally governed this neighborhood. So we have made an offer there for that, to really maintain this, and the goal of this project is to maintain the character of this neighborhood. It's really the selling point of these lots and the reason that this project is going forward. We feel, and I feel as, a resident of Victor, this is, the character of this neighborhood. I want to maintain it. It's not intended to do anything other than expand the character that is currently there. I have talked with some of the residents. They seem, two of the residents I've talked to, one was for the deed restrictions, one was not. But it is an offer that we have made, and it does cover, I would say, 80 to 90% of what they originally had in place. I'm happy to answer any other questions that anybody has on this project, but I feel this is, a positive project for this neighborhood.
Okay. With that, open it up to the board. Al, questions?
No, no questions, Joe.
Okay. Scott?
Well, I'm reading through, I guess, an email that we received. One of the neighbors is asking about the front setback of the house and whether this is too close to the road. And I'm looking at the drawing, and I think it looks like the houses are put at about the front setback. So could you tell us how this house sets relative to the neighborhood? Is it, these houses, are they going to be in agreement with the other houses, different, or?
That was what Brennan was attempting to address. The houses across the street, it was 34 and a half feet, 37 and a half feet, and then the others are at 40. We're proposing the front setback on these houses, I think, is at 40 feet. So we are actually a little bit farther back than the existing homes on the street.
Okay, and then this individual speaks about traffic. I think you've addressed that. Question I had on the water issue, has the fire marshal reviewed the hydraulic calculations, and is he happy with those sorts of things?
He has not actually asked me for the hydraulic calculations. We were actually relying on Monroe County Water Authority to review those. We can provide those to the fire chief to prove that we have adequate fire flows at the top of the hill.
Yeah, I mean, I know we have a lot of paperwork here on the number of homes on a dead-end street, but I think you have a dead-end main as well.
That's correct.
And so if you have a dead-end main on a long street, that usually speaks to high pressures but low flows, if it's not looped. So I'd be curious to know what the fire marshal thinks of that.
We can certainly provide it. We did run the fire flows, and it does meet the demand.
Okay. I just wanted to put that out there.
That's fine.
That's all I have.
Thanks, Scott. Ernie, questions?
No, I don't have any.
Okay. Wes, care to comment on?
Yeah. Hey, Susie? I just wanted to confirm what the applicant's representative has stated with regard to the setback requirements. What we have here, this is the subdivision map for Collier Crossing that was approved several years ago. I'll have to check the signatures to see what the date was. And I'll zoom in and point into, looks like it's from 2007. This is the subdivision map that was approved by the planning board in 2007. And if we look in to some of the dimensions here, we've got, zoom in a bit more here on this graphic. So minimum front setback, 40 feet, and under the proposed cluster subdivision, 30 feet, right? Minimum rear setbacks, 40 and 40. And then if we go to the actual depiction in the graphic of some of these lots, you'll begin to see lot 1, 2, 3, and this right here reads 30-foot front setback. So that was the setback that was imposed or was approved by the planning board for the cluster subdivision. And as we go up the hill, it seems that the front setback grows or had increased. So those first 3 lots were 30 feet. This one is 35. And then as we keep going up the hill, it grows. This is a 40-foot front setback. So not everybody has the same front setback requirement on this street, the current dead-end street. It varies. And we also have a graphic here. This is a survey of 6768 Collier Crossing done by DDS. And this will show the house. And you can see the dimension here. I can zoom in a little bit more. It's about 31 feet back from the right-of-way. So, and it's a little bit, right, the general public, they might not quite understand that even though, there may be a greater dimension between the house and the asphalt, the pavement, the right-of-way itself is, I believe, 60 feet wide, which kind of comes into the front yard a little bit. So, as you can see, this house does comply with a 30-foot setback requirement as it's 31 feet back. And each of the proposed homes in the development before the board now are proposed to be a minimum of 40 feet back from the right-of-way. So that, just thought it would be helpful to have a couple of graphics here that display correctly what the applicant has asserted here.
So they're exceeding or they're meeting whatever the requirement is per the original filed subdivision?
No.
No?
They got a variant, these are to the original, but the new subdivision is not a clustered subdivision, and it's not part of the original subdivision.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So this piece is a new or independent.
right.
This is a piece independent of that Collier
Okay,
subdivision.
And they are-
but nevertheless, the setbacks that they're proposing that are in agreement with our zoning regs.
Correct.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Don't pose any abrupt change or any negativity.
They're actually in that area, further setback than the houses in that area across the street in Collier
Okay,
Crossing.
Okay.
So the perception might be that they're close when you say 40 feet, but like Wes said,
it's
it's not 40 feet from the pavement edge, it's 40 feet from the right-of-way or the highway boundary.
Yep.
So, and that line is another,
So that's
10 feet anyway.
70 foot from center line,
Yeah.
right? Plus or minus?
easily, yeah. Yeah, 70 feet, right.
So, yeah, that's all I had there. Susie, you can feel free to switch me back. Couple of maybe a question for Mark, or Brennan, I'm sorry.
Happens all the time.
At least I recognize the error of my ways. The infiltration trenches on the proposed homes, and then there you've got a couple infiltration trenches that were also associated with proposed barns, correct?
Yes, correct. Every building has an infiltration
And,
trench.
and at what basis, like, we were looking at the Natural Resource Conservation Resource webpage, and we were looking at the soils there, and we had a concern about the soils that were a little bit farther downhill maybe not being so conducive to infiltration. Maybe because they're a little bit closer to the wetland area, I'm not sure. And I think I have that graphic too, but I guess the rationale, what's the rationale for the infiltration trenches?
From what we found, it was mostly sandy soil there, sandy gravel soil, which is going to be able to the infiltration trench is going to be able to store and infiltrate the average rainfall event, right?
Okay.
Obviously, your larger events will overtop and run over the ground. The only alternative, like you guys approved on the last site plan, was disconnecting downspouts with splash blocks. I think this is a better practice because we're not causing any surface erosion. We're putting that average annual storm event, which is the DEC's kind of stormwater regulation, is to take that average annual rainfall event and put it into a green practice, which is an infiltration trench.
Okay.
We don't have, other than the town's requirements, we don't have a state requirement for stormwater,
Okay.
given the project.
All right. That might be the only question I have right now. They did respond. We haven't provided a kind of a close-the-loop letter on our comments, but we have reviewed their responses. I think generally we're pretty satisfied. There might be some things we need to follow up on. But I've also brought with me tonight Part 2 of the EAF, and I'd be happy to go through that with you guys tonight.
Before we do that, I guess I'd like to make sure that the public has a chance to ask questions. So if anyone is here that is obviously interested in this project,
Yes, Chad Flansburgh, 6768 Collier Crossing. If the clerk could pull up that survey that was flashed on the screen before my property, I think that would be helpful later on. So I just wanted to first start off with that. I think the board is possibly, in all due respect, misframing the issue. The issue here, and I'm going to speak to that 25 lot waiver for the dead end street. So as I understand it, was it in 2007, the actual town board already granted a waiver. That waiver was for 26 houses. So that waiver has already been granted. Before the board, there's not an application to reconsider. The board has already reached a final approval on the exceeding the family home requirement that the town had on that 25 houses. So currently, there's an application to go beyond that. And I think what is helpful to understand, and it was mentioned at a prior meeting, is, why is there this 25 lot capacity for dead-end roads? And I understand that Labella was asked to do some research on that, and they actually produced a memo dated May 31st, 2012, and it has findings in it. And one of the findings were, no dead-end street, whether hydrants are present or not, and regardless of its total lengths, should be occupied by a number of single-family residents that would generate traffic sufficient to compromise the quality of life within residences near the dead-end entrance exit. And this is the important part. The standards have been identified, 25 single-family residences, as the threshold beyond which quality of life suffers, based upon an estimated 10 average daily trips, which they call ADT, per residence, and a threshold of 250 ADT. So it seems as if, also one of the things I looked at in preparation for today are the design and construction standards for land development. And this was actually passed by the town. It was last revised on May 22nd, 2023, which I think is helpful. But the reason that there is this 25 lot limitation is that anything more than that affects livability. And this town was previously asked to grant the waiver in 2007, and it did. It made the decision. We're gonna override it. We're gonna waive it. We're gonna give 26 houses. And I haven't heard anything that should motivate the board to go beyond what it's previously decided. And I think it's helpful if we take a look at the actual design standards, because I think they're very helpful in understanding this issue. And, one thing I want to point out is that the town board gave authority for an exception for this board to make exceptions. So we start off with paragraph 4, and this is at section 2.9.3, and I understand that section 2 is the design requirements in the town. In section 4, or subparagraph 4, says dead-end streets and developments with public water supply, that's this case, Kyle Crossing has public water, shall provide access to not more than 25 single-family homes, and shall have a turnaround at the terminal end in accordance with section 6. That's the standard details. And then it goes on to say that the length of dead-end streets in subdivisions without public water supply shall be limited to 900 feet due to restrictions for fire protection. Then it talks about exceptions, and this is the important part. Exceptions to length of dead-end streets may be granted at the discretion of the planning board in consultation with the town highway superintendent, town engineer, town traffic engineer, and the fire chiefs. Any exception shall be mitigated, including the following, and I'll go through those. But what I think is important about this section is that the town board has said that this planning board has exceptions when it comes to the length of that road. So if it's, somebody says, you know what, we have a dead end, we want to have a road that's 1,000 feet, this board has approval to grant that exception. But in this case, we're not talking about length, we're talking about house capacity. And the fact that the town specifically gave the exception authority for only length and not for house capacity, I think is important to your decision-making process. And I believe that the reason that the town board would have done that is because we're not talking about public risk. We're talking about living the livability of this neighborhood. The livability. And again, the town has already made the determination, 26, no more. So then if we look at the exceptions, which, again, I don't think that the town board has any real authority to grant an exception, but if we were going to go through them, I haven't heard, and I've listened to the public hearings. This is the first time I've had the opportunity to show up and make any objections, but I haven't heard any of these factors being discussed by the petitioner. And if we just tick through them, provision along the dead-end street for ease of access by emergency vehicles. I haven't heard anything about emergency vehicles, how there's provision for access on the existing street. The next one, and I think this is important because we just heard and we just saw this talk about setback. Greater front setback for properties near the dead-end access. I'm at 6768 Collier Crossing. We just heard how I think my setback is 31 feet. I'm close to the road. I didn't have the benefit back in 2007 to sit here and say, you know what, these setbacks, because we're on a dead end and it's exceeding the 25, that we should have greater setbacks. But now I am. And I can tell you that based on this guidance in this manual, along with the memo, is that the concern is that there's going to be many more vehicles going by. And over 25 houses affects the livability of this community. And I'm going to, in the houses you just heard, it's actually, what was done is the opposite. The houses that are closest to the exit point have less setback. So the people that are going to be affected the most don't have the setback protection. I haven't heard any discussion about what can be done to mitigate that. And that's one of the design requirements. Buffering along the roadway for properties near the dead-end access. Again, I haven't heard any talk about buffering. We've identified that this traffic is going to affect the livability of the neighborhood. And there hasn't been any discussion by the applicant of what he's going to do for this buffering on the roadway. Traffic calming design to control speeds along the dead-end street, such as islands, what's that, curve linear alignment? I apologize, I don't know what that is. But again, there's been no discussion of traffic calming design, and there's many things that could possibly be done. They could take some of their property, we could put in like a middle island, what it's talking about, but that isn't being proposed here. And there needs to be something done to address these issues. And then this is, I think number 5 is actually a really important one. layout of street systems in the development shall provide for access of adjacent future developments. What does this contemplate? This contemplates a road coming off Collier Crossing so that they could pull into Collier Park or whatever they call their road. Why don't they have a road going into their neighborhood? That could be designed, it could be engineered. We have that, for instance, on Abbey Way, which is off Collier Crossing, so there's a precedent for private roads. Why haven't they designed it like that? It seems that number 5 is saying to them that there needs to be a street system layout to accomplish this. And then, even this turnaround, I don't know if there's turnarounds. I mean, if I look at, what is this, RS 8 in section 6, I'm not aware of any paved turnaround like that. I know that there is, when they built Collier Crossing, there is there's an easement for a right-of-way walking trail, and there's a parking area. But I don't necessarily know if that's a turnaround for emergency vehicles. And I don't know if there's one at the top either that's specifically paved.
There is a paved cul-de-sac at the top, which is an alternative to the hammerhead that you just showed from the town specification. So that is officially a turnaround that we accept
Okay.
as an alternative.
All right.
Regarding traffic, I forget which number you said your house is.
6768. I'm the one with that small setback that was commented upon.
So your house
It's
is
directly across.
directly across. You're the first house in or the second house in from the pond?
So I am, let's see, there was the existing house, and then there was 2 houses. I'm the third. I think I'm lot 3.
Okay, so you are beyond where the driveways are being contemplated, correct?
Unfortunately, I don't know the subdivision enough. I know that I'm very close to the tail end of the neighborhood. I think I'm actually directly across where, ultimately the subdivision is occurring.
All right, so I'm seeing, yes, you are the last house, you are opposite the first, or the highest house in the subdivision. So honestly, the traffic affects your house not at all, the increase in travel coming back in. We had this conversation previously, along with several of the other points you've been making. The 25 homes that we have as a town code, I was on the board, so was Ernie at the time that this was created, and it was specifically, or the motivation was for fire protection, and that, part of that was distance, was the 800 feet you referred to.
Yeah.
And the mitigating factor was fire hydrants for fire protection, which is, there's one all the way up at the cul-de-sac, and I believe there's one not too far from Addie Way. So, the number of homes, the traffic issue for the number of homes really does not affect the balance of all of the homes, really, except for maybe 2 on this subdivision with the increase in traffic. So, and most of the increase in traffic would be towards County Route 9. So we had that conversation as well.
If I could just make one point, is that if you read the Labella, that memo, it talks about certainly the fire hydrant issue you're talking about, but it specifically speaks how the water, non-water is independent. That the reason that there's 25, according to Labella, is that it affects the livability. It's the traffic itself. And they're basing that, there's a footnote 2, that speaks to 200 average daily trips, which they call ADT, was identified as the practical threshold beyond which livability was compromised. Technical data indicates that each single home will generate almost 10 ADT. Assuming this average to prevail, 26 homes, the existing amount right now, which this town board approved, upon a dead-end street would result in more than 250 ADT, whereas 25 homes or fewer would not.
So that's average daily traffic for the entire day. It's not like a rush hour, or,
Yeah,
you know, a
absolutely.
peak hour, I should say.
But the argument that this is somehow water hydrant driven is not the issue. That misframes it.
Well, that's what framed it back in 2007.
And when?
In 2007, when the code was
Okay, well,
modified. So,
this town board revisited this planning design on May 22nd, 2023.
Yep, you
They
pointed
had
out.
the benefit of the LaBella memorandum dated May 31st, 2012.
Did it change the code regarding this particular issue in 20?
It did not. So with the benefit of this memo, the 25 was kept the way it was. And that was in part because the town board must have known that 25, beyond 25, affects the livability of a neighborhood. And again, you know, you're minimizing that because I'm across the street, somehow this traffic isn't going to affect my life. I suggest,
You have no more cars going by your house with this subdivision than without it.
yeah, but I
That was
have
my
no,
point.
but I also have no way to mitigate what's occurring. So you have the ability, given that there is this guidance about how it affects the livability. You can put conditions. You could put, it's discussed, what can you do? What are the issues? There is greater setbacks for the property. That can't be achieved for me. It's too
No,
late.
Yep.
Buffering along the roadway. Traffic calming design and control speeds along the dead-end street, such as islands and curvature alignment. Layout of the street system. Why is nobody talking about? And this is a question to the board. I'm asking, why is nobody saying, you know, let's follow the Abbey Way?
I'm sorry, you have to be more in front to get it on record.
Sure. Why are we not following what was done with Abbey Way? In Abbey Way, there's a private drive that intersects with Collier Crossing. Why is that not being done here? Why is that not even a discussion by the board?
Well, we're looking to create as much conservation easement as possible, for one, and that would be behind the properties rather than not intersect it with streets going through conservation, otherwise conservation easements. So the benefit to the environment is greater with the layout that they are proposing, because the back half, at least, of all these parcels is a conservation
That
easement.
benefits the owners. That means
That
behind there,
benefits the community, too, is having that conservation
does
easement.
the community have access to that conservation easement?
Not required to have community to have access to anybody's
So
conservation.
how does it benefit the community?
The environment, it's contiguous parcels, and that would be a comment the Conservation Board would want to weigh in on if you have that question, too. So,
And again, I still haven't heard anybody address the livability issue. You really seem to poo-poo it, actually.
well, not poo-pooing, I'm saying that it's quite minor, and.
It's
the
minor,
increase-
despite the LaBella guidance, despite the design conservation standards, you're saying it's quite minor.
I think that the traffic issue is very minor.
Is there a traffic study that's being based on?
Yeah, well, they presented information on traffic volume increase.
And what is that report
Minor.
entitled? I mean, I haven't seen it. I don't
It's
have
information that they've
access.
provided, but I think what I'll do is let our town engineer address some of this. He's jumping at the bit, I think. So, am I wrong?
No. So I hear your concerns. They're valid concerns, right? And I understand.
I think so.
Understand them. Yeah. And as far as creating a new street, like similar to what is it, Abbey Way?
Addie or Abbey Way, yeah.
Abbey Way. So one of the benefits, or I don't know if I want to characterize it as a benefit, and I'll maybe Brendan Marks can.
But you agree that there's
speak
a
to this as
precedent
well.
for it. I mean,
No,
ultimately.
I don't think that necessarily because the presence of what's there today is a precedent for requiring the developer to create a new street for this particular project, right? in creating a new street for this project, they're creating new infrastructure that the town, likely, if they offered it for dedication, would have to maintain.
So it's, Addie Way is a private road.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be dedicated.
So the other thing that this does, their layout, now, I don't want to defend their design, right? They're
But
going to
you
have to
are.
defend their own design. I'm just characterizing what they've indicated to us.
Yep.
Right? Adding a road in here is going to require more disturbance of the land that's there. It's somewhat sensitive, given the soils and the slopes, right? There are some steep slopes in that area, and there might not be an opportunity to do, a roadway that's sufficient for the number of homes that they're looking to do. And,
Well, why is that? Addie Way is in its back door. It has, 4 houses? It's the same concept.
So-
It's in the same location.
would you be okay with a new road with the same amount of homes?
I think, to me.
Same amount of traffic is what would result as
To me,
this
the
project?
simplest thing is, if you look at Craig Antonelli's subdivision right down the road, I think it's.
On Rise?
Anton Rise, a little slit.
Yeah.
Why isn't that the concept here? There's 2 ways we can do it. They can just have an egress off County Road 9, or they can have, following the Abbey Way, a private road into their neighborhood. And again, and maybe one of the frustration points is that what Collar Crossing has tried to do, because we're here, well, this is just an infill, is to have uniformity. Have the same architectural controls, have the same deed restrictions, so that we have a unified neighborhood. We have not been able to achieve that. And we've heard that, having these architectural controls could affect the ability to sell the lots. I think, again, if we're going to have an infill and we're trying to achieve a consolidated Collier Crossing, it all needs to be the same. We're not able to achieve that. So I think the next best thing is to have a separate road that goes into this neighborhood. I don't think anybody's saying they don't have a right to build houses here. What the issue is again, this board in 2007 already granted the waiver. Why is it going to exceed that waiver? It's already decided the issue. You don't get 2 bites at the apple. Pooler was here. Believe me, if he could have got more, he would have got more.
He was not able to develop this parcel because it was a completely separate land owned by someone else.
Yes, but do you think if he could have built 40 houses, he wouldn't have?
I think he would not have because we wouldn't have permitted it.
Yes, you may.
He might have.
Yes, this board exercised its discretion. That's exactly right. It exercised its discretion then and said, no more than 26. Why change that decision now? There's no basis to do it other than we have a developer that wants to develop land and make money. We have a different developer.
Well, we have to also weigh the pros and cons of how land is developed within the town and whether or not it's beneficial to do what you're suggesting and come off of County Route 9, which is a busy road with less, it'd make it more dangerous, honestly, to add another entrance to another road just down the street from this. And I know, Scott, the separation is 400 or 500 feet, correct, on the,
Yeah, I think based on our current regulations, I guess listening to the comments being offered, it kind of makes me think that we should access our traffic person at Labella and have him take a look at it from a traffic perspective and some of these livability questions that have come up, given that Labella was.
And this is Labella's work. I mean, this is the Labella memo.
understand.
Labella's memo isn't talking about public safety. In fact, they say public safety is not why there's 25 houses. They specifically reference that in this memo. This memo makes clear 25 houses is all about livability.
well, we're about to take some action this evening, not approve the subdivision. We are going to review Part 2 of the environmental impact statement and.
EAF.
EAF,
Environmental
right, assessment form, sorry. And traffic is one consideration for that. I did not, I apologize if I came across as that was a non-issue, but we will be reviewing that as part of this EAF.
And I just want to make one last point, then I'm going to sit down and listen.
Well, thank you, because I've been pretty lenient with normally 3 to 5 minutes, so we're,
Absolutely, I appreciate it, is that, again, I believe a final determination of this issue was made. This town made it in 2007. And I don't see an application to reopen that final determination. You don't get 2 bites at the apple in front of the planning board, you get 1.
different developer, different parcel, it's dedicated highway, that's why we would consider it.
I respectfully disagree.
Okay, you're right. Thank you. Al?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, the way the code is evaluated, where the planning board has some discretion, it's on a case-by-case basis based on the totality of that development and the totality of the impact. So there are no absolutes in any of this, unfortunately.
Let me just quickly, just since you.
Wait a minute,
directed
wait a
comment.
minute, wait a minute.
Okay.
The board is asking questions now.
I thought he just asked me a question.
No,
There was no
respond.
question, it was a
Statement.
statement.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So,
I don't see any possibility of putting a different road in there, based upon what I see here. There's a conservation easement, which you can't go across. There's a pond. And even if they did, you'd have the same view from where you live. I'm not saying one way or the other whether I agree with this or not, but I'm just making a comment here that you could consider.
Is that a comment or a question?
No.
Because there was mention
it's
of
not a
pond.
comment.
statement, it's a
Not
statement,
question.
Oh, that's
Not a
safe.
question.
it's for the record. The podium is still open to anyone else who is interested in making a comment. There are a few other people here that I presume might, or are just here to listen, but
I would, David Cokewood again, I would just like to, put on record that we did offer, again, we offered those deed restrictions in line with what is currently in place. Those were flatly rejected this afternoon by my counterpart here as insufficient. So, while we've made a proposal at our own time and expense, that has been flatly rejected. This is also, with the Architectural Control Committee that was proposed under the original agreement, that does not govern this project. This would be one individual that would be controlling and architecturally reviewing this project if we agreed to that, which gives me the pause to not join that document. So we're happy to work with the town, we're happy to work with the residents, but I think we've done the least impactful design for this project, not adding more disturbed area, impervious concrete and asphalt, and we think this is the best design for what's permitted under this 13-acre lot. So thank you.
And until we reject the application through our review process, that's what we're required to review. So we'll be going through this still, considering comments that we get from everyone. So
I don't want to take place of any other public that may want to comment, but
we're still open.
I'm an engineer, I'm sorry, I'm not an attorney, so I'm just going to be very brief and very, very straight to the point here. So we have a lot that's about 13 acres. It's zoned for this size lot. We meet the zoning criteria for frontages, lot size, and right-of-way width. It looks as though, if you were to go back to the other slide, the last slide, it looks as though the waiver was actually granted here for these lots that are on this private drive, and that's also why they went with the cluster. So maybe that's why the waiver was granted before, is that so Pooler could get those extra lots on it. If they did not grant that waiver, there would be 4 lots on Collier Crossing. It would be a traditional double-loaded subdivision like you see everywhere else. So it brings me to, public safety, we've talked about fire flows. We've addressed those. There is an emergency turnaround. I did address that and show that at the last meeting. We have provided landscaping, which will be enhancement to the community and provide our buffering. The road is currently curvilinear. As you can see it, there's a pretty good dog leg here, which does make it so you can see end to end. And there's also some vertical curves in the road, which provides some traffic calming that the code already that asks for. So there's traffic calming built into the original subdivision. So, and then there was a fire vehicle turnaround at the end. You know, it all comes down, private drives, in my opinion, are a burden to the town. They're a burden to people that live there. There's a lot of shared access, maintenance agreements, and a lot of livability concerns that maybe those people that live on that private drive, and we have the frontage, we have the lot size, we have everything that meets the zoning code, so that's why we're asking for the waiver. We meet the access management plan. We've provided traffic data as far as counts and increase, 6 vehicles per peak hour. There is some concerns in the back of the lot that we put under conservation from the wetlands, steep slopes. That's why we have not proposed private drives along flag lots. It all circles back around to the definition of livability. I did actually have to look it up because I was like, what is it? So livability is the degree at which a place is good for living. So, and it also goes on, if there's concerns for the long-term well-being. So the livability of Collier Crossing, I don't think is compromised at all. I mean, you've got double-loaded streets, as you see up here, a house from across from a house, you've got headlights from the driveway pulling out. This is a urban or a suburban subdivision. This is like any other subdivision within the surrounding community of Victor. So I don't think any of the livability has been compromised, given the traffic data. The only thing you can talk about is headlights, but, driveways across from driveways is pretty common in subdivisions.
Okay. Anyone else from the public have any comments? All right, public meeting, or public hearing is still going to remain open, I believe. But we do need to make the determination for lead agency first, and then we can move ahead, I think, with part 2 or the EAF. All right, so just to share with you, town engineer's perspective made some sense that we're going to hold off going through the Part 2 EAF and request some additional traffic information from our traffic engineers so that we can address that element of congestion and or livability, whether or not that's a significant factor in this application. So. But in the meantime, the time is passed for anyone else interested or involved agencies to declare an interest in becoming lead agency. They have not, so I have a resolution that declares that affirms our lead agency status for the project. So I will keep the public hearing open for that discussion coming up at the next meeting, and go through this resolution for determination of lead agency. So regarding the Collier Park preliminary subdivision application 01SPS 2023 606 County Route 9, whereas on or about July 18th, 2023, the Secretary of the Town of Victor Planning Board received a preliminary subdivision application entitled Collier Park Subdivision, proposed at 606 County Route 9, and whereas it is the intent of Comark Holdings LLC, the applicant, to develop 6 single-family residences on a 12.925-acre parcel with an existing house located on Lot 2 with a new proposed pole barn on Lot 1 and Lot 2, and whereas Town of Victor Planning Board reviewed preliminarily classifies the project as Type 1 action under State Environmental Quality Review Act, whereas the Town of Victor Planning Board intends to proceed with the coordinated review as required for Type 1 actions, and a lead agency must be established prior to making a determination of significance. Now therefore be it resolved that the Town of Victor Planning Board declare its intent to act as a lead agency and directed the Planning Board Secretary to mail the EAF with Part 1 completed by the project sponsor and a copy of the subdivision application to all identified, involved, and interested agencies, notifying them that a lead agency must be agreed upon within 30 calendar days of the date that the environmental assessment form, EAF, was mailed to them, expressing the town planning board's intent to act as lead agency. Notification was sent to the New York State Department of Health, Environmental County Department of Public Works, and the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. The Ontario County Planning Department, Ontario County Water Authority, and the Town of Farmington Water and Sewer Department were also notified of the pending application as interested agencies, and whereas the involved agencies submitted responses indicating that they concurred with the planning board acting as lead agency. Now therefore, be it resolved, the Town of Victor Planning Board assumes lead agency status. Do I hear a motion for?
Move.
I'll move.
Moves, Ernie seconds.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carried 4-0. So we are going to proceed as lead agency, and at the next meeting, we'll be reviewing Part 2 of the EAF, pending receipt, a review by Labella's traffic.
So I'm
engineer.
going to follow up with our traffic people at Labella and look into this quality of life issue, and maybe have some more color to be able to present to the board to help you with your deliberation and decision-making there.
Okay,
Okay?
great. Thank you, Wes.
Yeah, I think
Other
that's a good
comments?
idea.
Yep, okay.
Are you guys, are you going to close the public comment?
No.
We're going to keep it open. So there may be some conversation that comes out of that review. And honestly, we're going to get some more information that the public may have some comment on. So that's why we need to leave it open. So that's all for now. The last item on the agenda, mobile graphics building. This is 7120 Lane Road, zoned residential 1, residential 2. Application 19 SP 2023. Applicant is requesting approval to demolish a pre-existing barn and shed and construct a 7,488 square foot building to support their existing business operations. I think it's been modified since this last description. The original application had 2 accessory apartments. It no longer has that. It's a 1.76 acre property, so we'll get into that in a moment. Hi.
Yeah, so first off, my name is Mason Everhart. I'm an engineer with DDS Companies. I'm here on behalf of my client, Mobile Graphics, tonight. Yes, Joseph, you are correct that it has been revised. So we have already been before the zoning board, as you may know. We gained unanimous approval on the 18th of this month. I can go through the various things that were approved if you would like me to at some point. They also completed Part 2 of SEEKR. But of course, this is the first time that you are all seeing this application. So because of this, I understand that approval is kind of out of the question tonight, and that is completely understandable. I really just want to use this as an opportunity to kind of, break the ice and solicit feedback from you all.
It is a public hearing. It's open, so if the public who's left wants to ask any questions. Yeah, fire away.
So Mobile
Glad to hear
Graphics
about it.
wishes to demolish an existing barn in the northwest corner of the property in order to construct a new building that is now going to be for storage purposes. The new building will utilize the existing curb cut on the parcel, as well as new public connection for water and sanitary sewer. It's a very straightforward new build. The client does request that we maintain the existing barn until construction is complete of the new barn, just to save on various things such as time and storage costs. All proposed lighting for this new building will be wall-mounted. It's shielded. It's dark sky compliant. You don't have to worry about any light spill off of the premises. And this development will result in approximately 0.7 of an acre of soil disturbance, which is under that 1 acre threshold set by the DEC, therefore not requiring a stormwater pollution prevention plan. We will be following existing drainage patterns on the site. There is currently a stormwater management pond, and in lieu of an increase in impervious surface that we intend to have, that stormwater management area will, of course, be also increased to accommodate for that. There will be no negative impacts to neighboring properties and to the environment and to the town of Victor at large. With that, I think I've covered a majority of the things, and I'd like to turn it back over to you guys.
Thanks. I don't know, maybe we'll start with Wes, if he's got any technical comments that you'd like to bring forward to the board before we start.
So we haven't performed a full review of this plan set yet, but we will be in short order. But one of the things I wanted to ask you, and you mentioned that it sounds like there's an existing stormwater pond on the site?
Correct, yes.
Okay, is it like up in this area?
It is, it's where, yep, right up there.
Okay. So one of the things I was looking at, and I'm just a planner, right? But you've got the existing residence here, this new building proposed here, and then you've got kind of a larger expanse of an area in between the two buildings and your stormwater management here. Is there any possibility of moving this building closer to the existing building so as to create a little more distance to this particular residence here and also provide an opportunity maybe for a bit of a vegetative buffer?
So that's more of a question that I'd have to bring up with my client.
The owner, okay.
I can't answer that question currently, but I'd be happy to have a conversation with them and get back to you on that.
I'm wondering if that comment honestly goes with something that I was thinking of, is you have a lot of additional impervious surfaces you're
Yep.
proposing with this. And there's some necessity there, but can you consolidate some of that with this? To go with Wes's comment about moving the building closer to the existing, and then have some more green space between the building and the house next door.
Right. One potential conflict, and again, I mean, I haven't given this much thought, but you know, they do occasionally have some large trucks that come in and out, come and go, and you know, having that asphalt be as wide as it is just allows for easier turning movements and things of that nature. But again, it's going to be something that, you know, the client is going to have to discuss with them.
Anything else, Wes?
No, not right now.
Okay. Ernie, start with you. Questions? Comments?
What is this structure in the next lot to the east?
On their the next lot over from
Yes.
there?
It says 7094.
I believe it's a home.
It's a house,
Yeah.
Is it?
a single-family resident.
Single family.
It's the one with the dirt bike.
Yeah, with the dirt bike
Remember that
trails
one?
and the jump.
Yeah, that's it. It looks like they're starting to reclaim that property as more by doing some regrading, but that's in the latest aerials anyway.
And what is the structure that's shown on here, and your lot, which is?
So that's an
white one
existing
in the
storage
corner?
barn.
That's the one you're gonna rip down?
That's the one that they plan on demolishing, yes.
Okay.
So yeah, obviously throughway to the north, single-family homes on either side, and then Victor Central School District is to the south.
Okay, that's all I had.
Scott?
So the proposal is to construct a building that replaces that building in favor of 2 one-bedroom accessory apartments, is that right?
Yeah, so that's no longer, that's been revised. We had to go to various meetings with the zoning board, and I can outline what exactly was discussed there. On September 18th of this month, they approved an additional 2 employees, an allowance for a showroom in that building, and then approval of the new building, including up to 100% business use, provided that such use is limited to storage and installation and not production. And they're removing the apartments entirely,
Removing the apartments entirely, okay.
which shrinks the square footage down to, I believe, 3,834. I can confirm that, though.
About half of what it
About
was.
half of what it was, yep.
Smaller footprint, less intense use, or consolidated use, I guess, and
Yeah.
no living space.
So I think I remember this property when I was on the zoning board. Did we back then, that had to be 10-plus years ago, did we give the property a use variance at that time? And is your recent visit with the ZBA, was that to amend the use variance, or am I thinking of the wrong?
So I can't speak on what initially happened 10 years ago, but I know that the ZBA currently just took issue with the fact that they didn't want any apartments up there. I know my client was looking forward to being able to have 2 apartments up there, and unfortunately, that's just not in the plans. As far as an amended use, I believe so.
What you're thinking of,
They had one to begin with, right?
and they amended it.
And they amended it, okay.
That's what he's asking.
Okay, yeah, yes,
This is
they amended
new.
it. Yes.
It's not very easy to get a use variance, and I remember when this one came in before us on the zoning board, it took multiple meetings to my recollection, but,
Mhm.
so I remember the parcel, and I understand what you're doing, and it's kind of a unique area.
Scott, I think that the owners used to live in the house to the west,
I believe so, yeah.
is that right, Lisa?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think it made sense back then, perhaps, to the zoning board.
Yeah. I agree with Wes's comment, with something close to what appears to be a single-family residence to the west, maybe the former owner's house, I don't know. But having, these different uses so close to one another is something we should be cautious about. Those are my comments so far.
Okay. Al?
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, to the extent that the applicant could move the proposed building to the east, closer to the existing structure, I think would be beneficial.
Would it, anything else? Sorry.
Oh, that's it.
Okay. With those comments regarding moving the building, was it ever considered to even just make a large addition, and then you have one loading dock series, and you can access both buildings through that one set of loading docks?
I don't believe so.
Would it make sense to look at that again?
I could discuss that with them, yes.
Because honestly, I have a hard time putting the building personally so close to that property line, because it is such an unusual use for that stretch. Even though the throughway's right there, you might think, well, it's kind of industrial, if it, with the noise and everything. But the size of the building previously proposed was way larger than I could be working, and I'm honestly, I understand why the zoning board decided that it made no sense to put
Yeah.
apartments in there. So normally you'd put a large addition on here and have some, and I don't know how the business works and flows, and maybe it doesn't make sense, but it seems to me that sheltered access through the entire complex would make more sense than having 2 separate buildings that you might have to go cross-lot to service. And you might reduce the impact of impervious space enough to minimize or remove any kind of expansion to the stormwater facility. So you'll end up with a greener space, less pavement, and more workability.
Right.
So,
As I'm sure you can understand, I'm hesitant to
no,
speak on that
understood,
just because
yeah.
that's really more
I
of
would
something that.
suggest that at the next meeting, perhaps the owner might come in and explain the process, why they can and can't do certain things, and see what we can do to work through this by consolidating the buildings and making it more of less of a three-dimensional visible presence by having 2 large buildings and, separated, but making one maybe behind the other and extending to the side, make an L shape, for
Right.
instance.
I think the idea behind it was more that, they already have an existing barn there for storage, and they kind of just wanted to have something new and improved as opposed to that.
Yeah.
And, probably didn't really see any issue with, considering there's already an existing barn there, just constructing something right in front of it that's similar.
I guess I'm just concerned that the design was originally driven by a separate building because they wanted to just replace it with a bigger building and some apartments and. Whereas now the apartments aren't there, so why not look at having just a building addition on it?
Sure. Yeah.
Look at the traffic flow, all that, I'm not trying to
No, it's something to
have
consider.
them, have to have more engineering costs, but I think in the end, they might end up with less cost in the long run to do this. So those are my comments. I don't know if anyone else.
No, I agree, Joe. I mean, to the extent that the operations could be accommodate one larger building, or at least with a connection, to me makes practical sense.
Yeah.
But if that's not in the cards, then I think our other comments would still hold.
Yeah, sure. So, I guess those are our comments. If there's anything that, I'd like to see that, those addressed. And anything else, Wes, that, from your perspective?
No, not yet, but we'll come out, we'll
Okay.
provide a comment letter, so we may have a couple more things for you.
Okay.
Probably not big ones, but
Yeah.
I guess I'll throw this out to Keith and see if he has any stormwater concerns. You know, we've had this discussion about the abandoned pond, and maybe they can have it configured differently and make it smaller and all that if they have less impervious space. So, sorry to put you on the spot, Keith.
Keith Maynard, Town of Victor Stormwater Program Manager. So honestly, the stormwater facility is not even in my inventory, didn't even know it's there. So until we see, exactly what they want to do with it, and it's under an acre, so they won't need SWIP coverage. So usually this wouldn't even make my radar.
Okay,
So, but obviously, the less impervious space, the better, so.
okay, thanks.
I just have a final comment to make. I'm remembering when we granted the use variance when I was on the zoning board, and I think, one of the compelling reasons behind it was the relative low use of this particular piece of property. I understand the building being proposed is for storage, right? So theoretically, the use isn't going to increase all that much, but I remember, as I said, several meetings where we went back and forth, and I think eventually the board felt at that time that, there wasn't a whole lot to this, but what I can't help but notice now is that it's growing, and I'm wondering what the impact is to the neighbors if not the neighbor to the east, the neighbor to the west, and others. That's my comment.
I'm just looking at Google Earth from the thruway. You see one garage door there on the existing building, and then I think there's another one from Lane Road. You can see it on the side of the building. So adding 3 more garage doors to the storage building, seems like there's more truck traffic that's going to go to that than was originally, than is now being used, and certainly than was on the previous barn or shed.
I guess I would add also that, this one is different, and it takes a lot to get a use variance, but you can also take a look at our regulations, and when you get right down to it, this is a commercial use. And to Wes's point about separation and coming at this from a planning perspective, I believe our regs require a certain separation between a commercial use and a residential use. I think it's
It's like 100 feet,
I think it's
isn't
at
it?
least 100 feet.
Yeah.
And I think we're emulating that here.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of what our conversation has been sort of headed towards. Yes, there's a use variance, but yes, there's kind of a safety valve to that, which is us, as I see it.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. The side setback, I think, is 100 feet, as I was remembering from our Rawson Road discussions.
yeah, I could look up in the code, but I think when you have a commercial zoning district, of which this is not,
Mhm.
but if you have a commercial zoning district that abuts a residential district, right, there's, to Scott's point, a buffer, it might be 100 feet. It might require to be vegetated as well, so.
And when I saw the apartments, I thought perhaps they're using apartments as kind of a transitional use between the commercial and the single-family residential of the west, and I thought, well, maybe that'll work out, but I think it's kind of abrupt to do it this way. Guess that's the
You mean
word.
with the building so close to
Yeah,
the parcel?
yeah.
Yeah. So,
And you can slice it and dice it however you want, but at the end of the day, it's a commercial use next to a residential property.
okay. I agree. So, good points. I think you've got some things to think about. Talk to the owner.
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate the input from all of you. Definitely some things to think about and discuss with the
Yeah.
client.
I would strongly encourage that they look at consolidating the buildings, or at least putting them near each other, and providing some vegetation buffer between the house and the new structure, or the enlarged structure, if you will. So, unless there's anything else from the board, I think that's it we can do for now.
Can I just clarify one
Sure.
more thing? Even if down to brass tacks, it's a commercial use, considering it's in residential zoning, does that 100-foot buffer apply, or does it not?
No, I don't think it applies. I'm just using it as a discussion point.
Okay.
If it were commercially zoned and if it were inserted somehow into this residential property as it kind of is via the use variance you have, then, that's just something to consider.
Right.
Just for the board's perspective and coming to some sort of resolution.
I think that's an excellent comment, and in particular, the section that we're talking about, which does not apply to this parcel, is section 211.22, paragraph C6. And that reads, whenever a permitted use in the district, and this is commercial zoning district, is located adjacent to any other district, a fully landscaped buffer shall be provided along the full length of the adjacent district. A 100-foot buffer shall be required adjacent to residential districts. A 30-foot buffer shall be required adjacent to other districts, yeah. So this buffer area shall be planted and perpetually maintained with live trees and shrubs at least 6 feet in height, and shall have such other grading and landscaping as necessary to visually and audibly screen the commercial activity, so on and so forth. So I think that's the theme. That's what maybe the planning board might try to strive to get toward, even though it's not applicable in the residential district.
Yeah.
From a pure zoning perspective, it's not the same thing, but the intention is certainly there to absorb.
And there is quite a bit of landscape buffer between Mobile Graphics building now and the house to the east. And we'd certainly want to see some buffering trees and things, as the Wes just talked about in the code, between the new building, wherever it ends up, and even if it's along or near the property line, that's probably the best buffer anyway. So, okay?
Those are all great comments. I appreciate it.
Mhm.
Things to consider and
Okay.
discuss with the owner.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other items tonight?
I'd like to update the planning board just real quick. I attended the town board meeting last night where the town board opened the public hearing on the 7200 Rawson Road rezoning application. So the applicant was present and, had an assignment coming out of that meeting. I believe the public hearing is still open, and the applicant will be, doing some research and bringing back some more information for the town board to consider. I did have the opportunity to share this board's recommendation with the town board last night, so just wanted to let you know that.
Did the buffer area discussion come up in that conversation?
Not so much the buffer area. A lot of talk about the density
Density, yep.
and a bit about traffic. And then I emphasized your recommendation about limiting the density to what the 2014 density was, which was about 2.6 units per acre, or roughly
2.5.
48 units or so.
2.5, I think.
2.5?
2.5?
Okay.
Maybe that was it.
And once again, that the town board needs to rezone that property or renew the LDD, or what?
Yeah, so what the application was for 7200 Rawson Road, in 2014, the town board approved a PDD rezoning.
PDD, sorry. yeah.
Yep, and since no development occurred on that project within a certain time frame, the PDD had a sunset
Expired,
clause.
okay.
Exactly.
Yep,
It
okay.
expired, it reverted back to light industrial, and now we've got a new applicant looking to change the zoning to a PDD again.
Okay,
Yep.
all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Was there any discussion on that building to the east of it and its status and how that all kind of fits in with the
Working on there.
PDD?
Yeah, we did talk about, or the town board did discuss that, and the applicant discussed that with the board. My understanding from the testimony of the applicant is that they have a lease for that building, and so I think it is occupied now, and it's anticipated to be occupied in the future.
It's light industrial, commercial,
As light industrial, for light industrial use. And, there was a bit of talk about, what happens to that parcel and that building should the need for, a change in parking occur? Was that gonna come back to the planning board? And,
I think we had a discussion about PDDs here. We actually had a couple of PDD applications, I think, that came through for like that one on Turk Hill Road and maybe another one, and what constitutes a PDD, which is typically a mixed use, right?
Yeah, so you're right. What constitutes a PDD, right? In my profession, a PDD would be like a very mixed-use type of development, almost like what was proposed at Fisher's Ridge.
Right.
However, the way the town code reads, it can be residential, it can be industrial PDD, it can be a commercial PDD, or a combination thereof, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to have this whole mix of uses. But that was part of your recommendation, if you recall, is that, we urged the town board, or you urged the town board to either encourage or require some other type of use beyond just the residential and industrial, so,
Yeah, otherwise it's not really a PDD, I don't think.
yeah.
Working in some other communities, like the town of Canandaigua, they're instituting, I guess it's a form of a PDD or a PUD or whatever you want to call it, a cluster development that does mix uses. And the thing that seems to be popular right now is kind of having lower level retail and upper level apartments and things like that create varied conditions. I guess when I looked at this particular project and I saw that building to the east, I wondered if it was somewhat of a ploy. I know that's hard to believe with a developer, but maybe a ploy, to get the PDD status in order to really focus in on the residential component of what they're doing. But it sounds like you don't really need to have it anyway.
Right, and there's another example of a PDD over on the east side of town. I think it's Ballerina Court, and that's purely residential. That's actually a PDD.
Did they actually, I don't know if they built the apartments behind there on the rise there?
I don't think those have been built.
Yeah.
The Willow
So
Rise.
then a PDD really becomes kind of a form of a cluster development or something.
Yeah, a bit of a cluster development, or a project that doesn't fit any of the particular, any of the municipalities' particular zoning districts for density or use, something that's different that doesn't fit cleanly in any of the other districts.
But if I'm a developer, I don't want to go in with that project under a cluster development because I'm going to get less yield, right? If I come in under a PDD, I'm going to get a higher yield.
Yeah, you could.
And that's the motivation. I'm sure that's the motivation here, because my whole perspective on this one is, why don't they just make a line, rezone it to multi-use or multiple,
Multi-dwelling.
Multifamily or something like that?
yeah, housing, and that's it.
Yeah, because,
It makes, this PDD is for, like you said, kind of a mixed-use development, and that the mixed use is very clearly separate between property lines, which is why I go back to the parking issue that's in the village and not much in the town, and as soon as you put this line there and you put all these residences, now you have no place to put additional parking for quite a large light industrial building. So I don't know how well the town board accepted that argument, but
so I think where this is going in my mind anyway is that the PDD version in the town of Victor is kind of a high-intensity cluster development, for lack of a better description.
Not bad.
higher density housing makes sense on that, in that space. I think we all kind of agree with that. What's the density that works is, under discussion, but this thing where a planned development district, it's not really, the two are not associated at all. So
Yeah.
that's what gets me a little frustrated with this application, is that, how hard you push. So,
Yeah, because if you come in with a cluster, then you gotta, I'm not totally familiar with Victor's regs on cluster, but in most cases, you have to subtract out, any of the lands that are unusable, such as the wetlands, and then you come up with a piece of property that, you have a theoretical number of lots you can get out of, and then you squish those into something else.
well, actually, I think what we've done is we've seen the density remain, it just gets packed into half-acre
Yeah.
lots or less, quarter-acre lots, because there's a minimum size for lots, generally speaking, and then the whole rest of it is a conservation easement that you need little infrastructure for the balance of it, so.
Yeah, but I agree. I think that project is more like multifamily, or maybe we need a zoning district particular to that sort of thing, but it's not a PDD based on PDDs that I've ever seen.
Yeah, well,
Whatever.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions, comments? Oh, come on up. Come on up. The meeting's still open.
This is so interesting. If there's any question why I come to these meetings, tonight should be the reason why I come to these meetings. Where would I get entertainment like
Lisa,
this?
name,
Oh, my God.
We need a name, address for Lisa.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's over. Do you? I don't care. No.
You're on the record.
Now, let's talk quality of life with the 7,200. You put in 69 units, and like you say, I brought this up last night. I mean, half of the 55% of that, right, was going to be dedicated open space. Right. And half of that 55 is completely unusable. You have the stream, you have the buffering, you have the state wetlands. You can't do and it's not fair to enter that into
The equation.
the equation.
At the moment,
I
that's what
said
we do,
that's-
though.
You did say that.
Right.
Yes. So what does that do to the quality of life to the people who are going to be swished into this thing? And you have just building, just lot stamps, these postage stamp
And
lots.
some people like little lots to maintain very little about. So,
There seems to be a push on little lots these days.
yeah, right. Well, it's a cost thing, too. I mean, little infrastructure, HOA, so that they have the same lawnmower guy do the whole property, for instance, and landscaping, and the roads are publicly dedicated, so the town maintains those. The only maintenance is outside of your house and whatever goes on inside.
And when they go and they walk their dogs and everything, they don't walk it there, they'll come up,
Yeah, well, I mean, there are, in this particular
Because there's
case,
so much grass area
Yeah.
and trees and
I mean, it's a
everything.
good conversation to have, but we don't have those restrictions or those elements. We could change the town code, say, if you're going to do cluster subdivision, now you take away all this other property that's unbuildable and remove that from the calculation,
Yes.
Right.
right? We don't do that.
That's what other towns make me do.
Woodstone, look at that, half of it was forever wild, or however you want to free, open.
Right.
And it's beautiful land. Every bit of it can be, you can walk it, you can do whatever you want up there, it's lovely. But here,
Sometimes it's a ruse.
yeah.
Right.
And I wanted to say, you guys are so good. God, that gentleman was just impossible, but you handled yourselves beautiful. I probably would have come over the and just go after him.
Well, we made an accommodation. He's a lawyer.
We figured that out.
Remember, we're still on the record.
I know.
Well,
We haven't closed the public meeting yet, so
well,
it's just a good conversation. Glad to have it.
oh, you guys.
And I appreciate your being here, too, honestly. It's kind of refreshing to have someone come and actually just observe and
Yeah.
offer from time to time comments. So
I like all of you. That's one reason I come. You're just good. Have a good
we're fun to be with.
Better than Monday Night Football, that's for damn sure.
Well, you got a debate on Thursday you could go to as well. Okay,
Motion to adjourn?
accepted.
Move second.
Second, all in favor? Have a great week, everyone.